Coming to you from the Spit Studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. This is the Spit Sports Show. Wow, it really just seems like every time the Canucks have a smidgen of hope, a piece of momentum, that once they have the opportunity to finally capitalize on that momentum and take it and use it to send them off into either the playoffs or just a better record, they just collapse underneath their own pressure and expectations. Like, they came in to last night's game with maybe the best momentum that they've had since the beginning of the season. You know that coming into this season, they had expectations out the wazoo, and they deserve to. They lost to the eventual Stanley Cup finalist in Game 7, and when you looked at their roster coming into the season with their center depth, the way that their wingers have been playing, obviously, Quinn Hughes is one of the best defensemen in the world. There was really no reason as to why the Canucks couldn't at least replicate what they did the year before. But the Miller Pedersen drama happens. The Canucks completely mishandled that situation. Nothing happens at the trade deadline. They try to make the playoffs. Miller gets traded. And eventually, after Miller gets traded and throughout the deadline, they actually start building back some of those vibes that are actually, I talk about vibes a lot, but they are very important to a hockey team. Vibes, locker room chemistry, momentum, that stuff all has a real impact. And Hedl looked good. O'Connor coming in looked good. The Canucks had real momentum. They had a huge win over the Flames a couple of nights ago, who they're tracking down for that playoff spot. They killed Chicago the night before the Utah game. They took the wild card 2 spot from Calgary in that win. Hughes looked great. Pedersen played maybe the best offensive game he's played in like 3 years. Everything looked so back. And then when they had the chance to just take a stranglehold on this race, basically knock Utah fully out of the playoffs. If they would have won this game, they would have had a 50-50 split at making the playoffs, and now it's not even close to that. So the team just looked lethargic throughout the whole game. And I understand that they didn't have Hedl in this game, which was super disappointing. And I'll just say real quick, the hit that he took was unnecessary. That guy should at least be fined the maximum amount. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the person who hit him, but that game was completely out of reach, completely unnecessary, and obviously there was at least a bit of intent to, I don't want to say intent to injure, but definitely intent to hurt him badly. So I understand Hedl wasn't there. He is the Canucks' main zone entry guy in the neutral zone. He has by far the most controlled zone entries out of anyone. He is by far the highest top speed in the neutral zone out of any Canuck. Totally understand it. That's a huge loss. But that does not explain 10 shots in the first 2 periods. They didn't get their first shot until 9 minutes into this game. And throughout the entire game, it wasn't just that they had a terrible early start. Like, the only goal that they scored was a Hughes point shot, which went through 3 people and then off of Miguel Sergachev's hand because he tried to like catch it and then he didn't catch it and like released it through the goalie's pads into it was a weird bounce, but like that was the only goal that they scored. They created very few high danger chances, which I'm going to get into in a second. And I understand that it's a back-to-back. Like, back-to-backs suck. But A, you played both of these games on home ice. It's not like you were traveling in between games. You slept in your own bed. And B, the Chicago game the night before was a cakewalk. Like, that was wrapped up 15 minutes into the game. Like, you could tell Chicago just had no legs. And C, this is a big game for playoff implications. Like I just said, like they are now, the Canucks, down to 29% to make the playoffs. If they would have beat Utah, that would have went all the way up to 50%. That is huge. And even though they are currently not tied, in the wild card 2 spot, tied with the Blues with a game in hand, their odds are slim because of what these teams have left on their schedules, which again, I'm going to get into in a little bit. But right now, out of the 4 teams competing for that spot, St. Louis now has the best chance to make the playoffs at 36%. The Canucks sit behind them at 29%, and then the Flames in Utah are sitting at 25%. So with that win, it would have been a 2-person race, really just Canucks Blues, 2-team race between Canucks Blues. Now with that loss, it's really anyone's spot to take. But thankfully, in this game, because their roster is so used to playing without really any offensive generation, offensive legs, they were able to grit and grind their way into a tight game throughout. I thought they played bad enough as to where they probably should have gotten blown out, but I do want to shout out a couple of guys who I thought had tremendous defensive effort. Besides the Bugstad pass that scored the first goal for Utah, I thought the Canucks in general were really good at getting their sticks in slot areas. I thought they were really impressive at keeping Utah to the outside throughout it. I thought that Garland block where he took a stinger and basically was playing on one leg and then was still able to clear the puck. Like, I thought that was a huge gutsy effort. That was awesome to see. And I thought it gave the Canucks a bit of momentum, which they used for a little. And Forbert had a couple of blocks that were huge too. I thought Jake DeBrusk made a couple of big plays to get the puck out of the zone. But eventually that dam broke. Eventually, when you have the puck in the offensive zone for the majority of the game, a bounce is going to go your way. And that's exactly what happened. Point shot takes a weird bounce to the right side. Cooley finishes it off, and it's 2-1. But what's so wild is the Canucks got a gift from the hockey gods that I thought, like, silly me, I thought they were going to capitalize on it. Brock Besser takes a high stick, which originally the commentators thought it was a skate. I never thought it was a skate. I don't know why they put that into the ether, but it was clearly a stick. Hit him in the face. They reviewed it. The Canucks get a 4-minute power play about halfway through the third, down 2-1. Chance to at least get a point out of this game, send it to overtime, tie it up. And they didn't create a single high danger opportunity. In my opinion, they didn't even create a slightly dangerous opportunity. That's not a stat, but that's just my eye. Like, they had 4 shots from the point with no traffic in front for any of them. None of those shots had a chance of going in on a 12-year-old goaltender, never mind an NHL goaltender. I thought Besser's drawing of that penalty should have been the spot where the Canucks were like, okay, we've been playing around. Let's turn the heat up, get one, and at least get a point out of this incredibly important game for playoff implications. But no, they didn't. And they tried this lineup with 5 right-handed shots and really just couldn't break the puck in for the entire 4 minutes. And speaking of Brock Besser, he looks like he's just checked out since the Miller trade. I haven't seen any sort of aggressiveness in the corners. I haven't seen him planting himself in the slot like he used to, taking all that physical abuse. He is a big, strong dude. I think he's like 6'2, 6'3, 215 pounds, but he's played like he's 5'9, a buck 30. He is getting knocked off the puck constantly. I don't see him placing himself in high danger scoring areas enough as a goal scorer. And obviously, that is not the only blame to go around. The Niels Höglander, Pettersson, DeBrusk line, which was so good against Chicago, they were awful against Utah. Like, really, really bad. The line posted the worst stats out of any forward line the Canucks had at 5-on-5. They recorded a 27.78 Corsi for, 18.12 goals for percentage. They were on the ice for team high 3 high danger chances and did not create a single high danger chance themselves. They were really, really bad. That whole line was really, really bad. I think even though this isn't a fair point, but I'm just going to say it anyways. I don't know why they're doing what they're doing with Lekkerimäki because he isn't performing very well in the NHL. He had a decent game yesterday. But as it keeps going, like, you can tell that there's a difference between a great AHL goal scorer and a great NHL goal scorer. He's a great AHL goal scorer. You need him to develop in the AHL more so when he comes to the NHL, he can play that goal scorer's role, which he's just not ready for yet. And I thought that was pretty apparent last night as well. So, with all of that said, Canucks management made the decision at the deadline that this season was going to be playoffs or bust. Again, friend of the show, Rick Dollywall, said before the trade deadline, Canucks owner Aquilini is going to have a lot of input into what happens at that deadline. He wants to make the playoffs. And the team just isn't playing like this is playoffs or bust at all. They're playing like they have nothing to play for. Like, that's what it looked like against Utah yesterday, which is so interesting because against Chicago the night before when they had something to play for, but not nearly the implications that this other game did. They looked like they wanted to ram their heads through the wall. Like, they came out with a fire under their ass. But as soon as it's a real game against a real team, it feels like they're just not on that level, especially Pedersen. Like, he's been ripping it up against the bad teams, but against the good teams, he's been invisible. And obviously, with Canucks management, me going into that sort of realm and them playing Utah, I just have to point out the fact that Aquilini and his disastrous hire of Jim Benning, both of those guys, they traded the draft pick that became Dylan Guenther for Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Just, I'm not trying to stick the knife in anymore for Canucks fans, but my point in bringing that up is the fact that you were probably thinking, like, the Canucks need to make the playoffs badly because of what this owner is doing. And that's exactly the point. Like, it shouldn't be about what an owner wants. It should be about how the team is progressing. And the Canucks, from the start of this season till right now, you could tell they just weren't progressing in the right way. They should have cut their losses while they had the chance to. Because right now, here's how the Canucks are looking. You're probably thinking to yourself, wait, what the heck are you talking about? The Canucks are in the wild card 2 spot and they have a game in hand over St. Louis. Like, what are you complaining about? They're, might make the playoffs here. Well, the reason they're in that spot and their odds are so low is because they have literally the third hardest schedule left in the NHL. They have Winnipeg twice, Vegas twice. They have to play Dallas. They have to play the Avs. Like, they have a hellacious schedule left here. Whereas St. Louis, who, like I said, they're competing against for this final wildcard spot, which is so bloody important to them. St. Louis has the single easiest schedule in the league remaining for the rest of the season. Single easiest. The Flames have the 12th easiest, and Utah is dead in the middle of the pack at 16th. So to say this is an uphill battle for the Canucks to make the playoffs, be an understatement. And now, with their playoff chances being where they are and the future schedule looking at what it is, like, all it does is confirm what I said before the trade deadline. Why didn't they just cut their losses and retool? Besser, Suter, Forbert, all of these UFAs who will not be back next season should have been moved, because it's just common sense that when you're not in a spot where you can win big in the playoffs, there's no chance this team makes a deep run. Cut your losses and get assets. Make the fan base think that you know what you're doing. Because I think without Besser, Suter, Forbert, whoever else they would have traded, I think they're in the exact same spot as they are right now. Except they don't have any expiring contracts. They have assets that they can work with. And the fan base is at least confident that they have a plan for the future. Just sitting tight and not doing anything on that deadline day just made no sense at the time, and it makes even less sense now. But it does make sense when you realize the guy who's calling the shots is maybe the worst owner in the NHL, and that's not my opinion. The Athletic came out with an article today ranking all 32 NHL owners. So 50% of it was what the fans thought. They surveyed over, I want to say, like 10,000 fans. It was a lot. And then they had their own input. Aquilini, the Vancouver Canucks owner, ranked 31st in every category. In fan engagement, in future prosperity. The only owner that he was above was the owner of the Buffalo Sabres. Good job, man. My overall takeaway from this season is top-down ineptitude has ruined what should have been a dream season and just turned it into a nightmare. Their handling of the Pedersen-Miller situation, trying to get Miller to push Pedersen more, which only rifted them apart, and then saying, oh, yeah, we're going to get it figured out. Oh, yeah, we're going to trade him. No, we're not. Yes, we are. And just flip-flopping all the time. What a distraction that was for the entire team when they were just flailing and drowning. And then I liked what they did with Miller, to be totally honest with you, but obviously you didn't get the return you could have gotten if you traded him earlier or didn't depreciate your own asset by constantly saying he was the problem. And then with this deadline, when you're not in a playoff spot, and even if you do make the playoffs, obviously you're not making a deep run. Like, what's the point in retaining all of these good players who aren't going to help you this season? Like, what's the goal of owning a professional hockey team? Is it to win a Stanley Cup, or is it to get a couple playoff home games and make some money? I think this season is directly on Aquilini, management, and I think all of the criticism that Tocchet has gotten for his systems and lack of generating offense, I think all of that should go into the roster builders of this franchise. I think Tocchet is a defensive coach, and the defense for the Canucks isn't a problem. It's the offense, which he doesn't have a lot of input in. That is where the players' instincts take over, and they haven't been good enough. Outside of Hughes. I love you so much, Hughes. Please don't leave. And that's the other thing. This season, there's no possible way it's a confidence booster for your franchise best player, top 5 player in the world defenseman. Like, this is definitely, if Hughes leaves, you could definitely write this as the first chapter as to why he eventually did. So what a disaster of a season. Aquilini, sell the team. I'm disappointed. That was a bad loss last night. Canucks sit at under a 30% chance of making the playoffs now, and really nothing to show for it, which sucks. Please let me know what you thought of my, well, kind of down take, to be honest. I don't know how you can be up on this team right now. In the comments below, I'm small enough as to where I can read all comments and enjoy doing so. So please leave something down there. Please like on the video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you really enjoyed it. Spit Sports Show just hit over 400 subscribers. Big things happening. And as always, I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out. Love you guys.